Morning and welcome. I'm Sheldon Greenberg. Everyone calls me Shelley. I'm Professor Emeritus at Johns Hopkins University. I'm a former officer with the Howard County, Maryland Police Department. And I'm co-lead, along with Jeff Michael, on the NHTSA-sponsored project entitled Innovative Approaches to Advancing Traffic Safety and Enforcement. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. Today's webinar is the fourth in our series and is entitled Reaching a New Vision for the Law Enforcement Liaison Program. As we discussed in past webinars, the field of law enforcement is changing rapidly. In some areas, the change is quite dramatic. For example, just yesterday, a news article reported that the city of Charlotte is about to spend $1.2 million to establish a civilian crash investigation program to relieve officers from responding to property damage collisions. Another article reported that the state legislature in Illinois has proposed legislation to limit officers' ability to stop vehicles for certain violations, including minor speeding violations. Change is occurring. The nation's law enforcement liaisons, or LELs, can play a critical role during this period of change, building on our successes, overcoming shortfalls, and shaping new direction in how law enforcement agencies, and particularly our frontline officers, engage in road safety and traffic enforcement. The most recent data from NHTSA indicate that crash deaths are at a 20-year high in the U.S. We know that effective traffic enforcement is one of the most important things we can do to reverse this trend. Unfortunately, enforcement levels are down, and getting these levels back to where they were, or even higher, will not be easy. Among their many duties, LELs provide peer-to-peer outreach necessary to influence effective traffic enforcement nationwide. Few others fulfill this role and can match LEL potential to affect needed change. In recent months, we've met with LEL leaders to gain their thoughts on potential influence that LELs could have on traffic enforcement. We've learned a lot. We focused on how they might help agency advance traffic enforcement beyond where it is today. They gave us their perspective on how LELs can break through some of the constraints that law enforcement agencies are facing. Possibilities include assisting local agencies with problem identification, providing technical assistance when selecting enforcement tactics, and providing ongoing mentoring to advance traffic enforcement. We know that some LELs already fulfill these roles, and more. We're looking at innovation and innovative ideas to advance traffic enforcement, and particularly the role of LELs. No decisions have been made on what to do yet. But as we mentioned in previous discussions, progress begins with ideas. So today we continue the conversation. Specifically, we want to focus on the development of our LELs and LEL education and training. What training is necessary for LELs to provide a broader range of services and support to law enforcement agencies? What training is needed for LELs who are just entering the field? And how can training support LELs throughout their career? Today, we're fortunate to bring back a couple of our LEL leaders from the prior webinars and expand our panel with additional authorities, who many of you already know. Our panelists are Janice Martinez, Glenn Cramer, Mike Hansen, and Brad Russ. I'll ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves in just a few minutes. Before we start, though, we'd like to have a brief presentation on a topic you'll be hearing more about. I'd like to present Charlie Fowles from NHTSA, to introduce himself and share some information. Charlie?
Thank you, Dr. Greenberg, and good morning, everybody. My name is Charlie Files. I'm your NHTSA representation on this agreement with Johns Hopkins University. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join us. Before kicking off the webinar, we just want to take a brief moment to highlight and discuss the law enforcement community collaboration reporting requirements as it relates to NHTSA's grant program requirements and your role as an LEL. First off, it's really important to note that this requirement is distinct from the public participation and engagement requirement, and this focuses specifically on law enforcement activities. The law enforcement community collaboration requirements can be broken down into two elements under an overarching umbrella of describing the state's evidence-based enforcement program activities. So the first element calls for the states to provide a description of the state's community collaboration efforts. This is specific to law enforcement, and oftentimes a law enforcement liaison is encouraging agencies' community collaboration efforts and reporting that back to the states to fulfill this requirement. This requirement is broad, and its fulfillment will be unique to your agencies. But some examples of these law enforcement community collaboration efforts can include utilizing virtual environments like online public forums to solicit comments and concerns from community members, hosting quarterly community forums on pressing traffic safety issues, using feedback from the community to determine the levels, the location, and the type of enforcement to address the issues discussed, or attending one community event each month at different locations around the jurisdiction. Again, these are only examples, and the specific activities conducted under this requirement will vary between states and agencies. The second part of this requirement is to share your agency's efforts to support data collection and analysis to ensure transparency and identify disparities in traffic enforcement, to inform on traffic enforcement policies, procedures, and activities. So examples of this can be broken down by each element. Data collection could be supported by holding training with LEA grantees on metrics to include in crash and citation forms to ensure thorough data collection. Analysis could include overlaying arrest locations with poverty levels to identify disparities. And traffic enforcement policies could be informed through data collection and sharing that data collection with law enforcement concerning recent trends in DWID. Again, these are broad examples, and there's not a one-size-fits-all approach to these requirements. Law enforcement liaisons should be working with their HSOs on these requirements to determine how they will ensure that local law enforcement departments are conducting community collaboration on traffic safety topics and what method of information collection works best for their state. As LELs, you should be having these discussions with your states about plans to support data collection and analysis to ensure transparency and identify disparities in traffic enforcement, inform traffic enforcement policies and procedures and activities. So we mention this here because we feel these requirements align with the goals and the vision of this project. Our overall objective here is to identify and provide the training and resources to elevate the role of the law enforcement liaison. We want you to have the tools to be the traffic safety champions for your agencies, communities, and HSOs. This will be discussed further in this and future webinars, and more information on these grant requirements and how they relate to your role and this project will be forthcoming in the near future. So finally, NHTSA supports and appreciates the work of the law enforcement liaisons and the law enforcement officers on the streets enforcing these laws. Far too many of our fatalities involve one or more driving behaviors which are enforceable. This highlights the need for enforcement and the large role it plays in the overall traffic safety picture. So we'd like to send a most sincere thank you for what you do and the hard work you and your officers do every day. So thank you for all your work. Enjoyed the webinar, and thank you, Dr. Greenberg, for the opportunity to speak here.
Thank you, Charlie. We're going to start the webinar by posing questions to specific panelists, individual panelists. Then we're going to pose questions to the entire panel. But first, a note to our audience, to the participants. Questions to the panel can be submitted using the questions button at the bottom of your Zoom page. We'll be monitoring the questions throughout the program, and we'll get to as many of them as time allows. Now, to get started, I'd like each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves. Janice, if we could start with you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Janice Martinez. I am the Florida Law Enforcement Liaison in Southwest Florida. I come from the Florida Highway Patrol, where I served for 17 years. I was a trooper in Polk County. I was a homicide investigator in the Tampa Bay area, and I ended my career with FHP supervising the traffic homicide unit and the DUI unit overnight. I have been an LEL for the past 10 years here in Florida, and I currently am assisting the LEL professional development team on the NHTSA level, and I get to travel around the country teaching the LEL professional development course.
Thank you. Glenn?
Thank you, Dr. Greenberg. My name is Glenn Cramer. I'm a retired deputy chief from the Washington State Patrol. I'm a former regional law enforcement liaison that represented the Pacific Northwest. I'm a traffic safety consultant. And thank you for, again, your participation in this webinar. And I'll go back to you, Dr. Greenberg.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Dr. Greenberg, and good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Hansen, and I currently have the privilege of serving as the director for the Minnesota Department of Public Safety Office of Traffic Safety. I've been the director here since 2017. Prior to that, I spent just short of 33 years with the Minnesota State Patrol. In the course of my career with the patrol, I worked in a variety of different assignments across the state, both in the metropolitan areas as well as in greater Minnesota. I retired with the rank of captain or district commander, overseeing our West Metropolitan District or the Minneapolis area, and then stepped into my role here. In addition to serving as the director for the Office of Traffic Safety, I also serve as the vice chair for the Governor's Highway Safety Association. I also chair the Minnesota Advisory Council on Traffic Safety and serve as one of the co-chairs for the Minnesota Towards Zero Deaths program. Look forward to our conversation today. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and we've got a really great group of panelists here, so I think we're going to have a great discussion.
Thank you, Mike. And Brad, if you introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Brad Russ. I'm currently the Executive Director for the National Criminal Justice Training Center. We have responsibility for a number of federally funded training and technical assistance programs that support law enforcement throughout the country. Prior to that, I spent 25 years with the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Police Department and retired as the Chief of Police. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Brad. So let's get started. Janice, if I may pose the first question to you. Last fall in the webinar, you discussed a range of activities to facilitate more effective traffic enforcement by local agencies. To get us started, would you cover some of that again and share any new thoughts you may have?
Yeah, absolutely, Shelley. So the LELs at their core, they serve as a bridge between the local law enforcement agencies and the National Highway Traffic Safety Office. The LELs are a wealth of knowledge and information when it comes to traffic safety programs. The majority of us have very strong law enforcement backgrounds, specifically in traffic safety. We provide resources and help motivate our agencies with traffic safety initiatives. LELs, we coordinate training sessions, workshops, we host conferences, recognition events, all with a focus on traffic safety. We provide technical assistance and guidance to law enforcement agencies on implementing traffic safety policies and practices. Sometimes it's as simple as helping agencies pull data on a local level or helping agencies build a plan that will pave the road for more comprehensive traffic safety strategy that ultimately drive their serious injuries and fatal numbers down. I mean, that is our goal after all. We facilitate communication and collaboration between law enforcement agencies and other stakeholders involved in traffic safety efforts. I always like to start with our NHTSA communication calendar, and then I build out from there. This is a minimum that I tell my agencies that we should be doing. We should be doing what NHTSA recommends. And then I always ask them, hey, how can we help from there? How can we go from there and build upon that? Here in Florida, each of our LELs are highly involved with our community traffic safety teams. Each of our LELs sit on at least one of our traffic safety coalitions that have a specific emphasis area. Personally, I sit on our Motorcycle Safety Coalition, our Pedestrian and Bicycle Coalition, and our Teen Driving Coalition. We talked back in the fall that, LELs, we gather feedback from law enforcement agencies regarding traffic safety challenges and needs. as an LEL, we are in a really unique position to have direct communication with boots on the ground. Some of the issues that we have today were non-existent 20 years ago. These types of very relevant and very now issues are crucial for program development. We also assist in evaluating traffic safety programs. If something is working and it's great and it's driving numbers down, let's get this information and let's share this information with other agencies and communities that can save lives. Yeah, and so that is kind of what we do at ACORE. We talked about this a lot back in the fall, and I'm excited that I get to listen to what other agencies are doing nationwide and share this kind of information.
Thank you. And I already have some follow-up questions based on what you said. Glenn.
Thank you, Dr. Greenberg. As we were visiting last September, the two essential roles for law enforcement liaisons is to be advocates for what two important concepts. One is legitimacy of traffic law enforcement, and the other is procedural justice. And these aren't new concepts. These are concepts that have been around for generations of professional law enforcement. And what I mean by legitimacy is that there are many that are questioning the purpose of traffic law enforcement. And you as law enforcement liaisons, it's important to share the important value that traffic law enforcement provides in maintaining a quality of life for the communities that we all serve. And then for procedural justice, that comes down to the fairness and the purposefulness of the traffic law enforcement, of focusing on those risky driving behaviors that put us all at risk. And a webinar like this, I see as a great opportunity. I think of a humorist that is in our history. Will Rogers had a saying that you may be on the right track, but if you're sitting there and not moving ahead, you may get ran over. There's a difference between knowing and understanding. The knowing of the traffic safety mission is important. It gives us direction. And you as law enforcement liaisons are subject matter experts. And you're subject matter experts because of your knowledge, your experience, your expertise, and accomplishments. But webinars like this help us to advance our knowing to a greater understanding of the traffic safety, of how to interpret, how to analyze, and how to explain the importance of traffic law enforcement in providing a quality of life to our communities. And so that's where I see this as an opportunity with subject matter experts like Mike, Brad, and Dr. Greenberg, is to expand our understanding. And I really value all that you do. And this is a privilege for me. And thank you again, Dr. Greenberg.
Thank you, Glenn. Mike, if I can turn to you. You present a new role in our panels, being director of a highway safety office. So I'm curious what you think, talking hypothetically. Do you think that having a cadre of LELs with new and expanded capabilities, new roles, would be effective in improving and advancing traffic enforcement?
The short answer, Dr. Greenberg, is absolutely. And I really don't think it's even optional anymore. You know, as Janice and Glenn pointed out, I mean, we are dealing with challenges today that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, most of us couldn't even imagine, especially when it comes to the world surrounding traffic safety. Traffic safety at its core is public safety. And Glenn, I like how you create the nexus between public safety and quality of life. It is so interconnected. And Janice, you're absolutely right. That LEL function, when I look at it from a state highway safety office position, that is my connection to the street. As much as I'd like to be out there doing ride-alongs every week and meeting with every police chief that is one of my grantees, I can't do that. I have to rely on those LELs to do that. And by improving, expanding, and building their toolbox out, that makes their job easier, and that helps me accomplish my mission, which, as all of us know, we save lives every day because of what we do. We're not going to meet the people that we save because you can't measure what doesn't happen. But that LEL function is absolutely crucial as we move forward. And as we deal with all of the new pressures that our partners in law enforcement are facing. I think it goes without saying, I speak for myself and I know I speak for the Governor's Highway Safety Association. Our support of law enforcement is unwavering. Law enforcement is the one tool we can take off the shelf and we can use right now. We can employ it in a variety of different ways, and our partners at NHTSA are starting to recognize additional ways that we can use that tool. And so by improving what is available to our law enforcement liaison cadre, we are going to improve our overall performance, and we are going to succeed in our mission of saving more lives each and every day.
So then, Mike, if I may, as a follow-up, as a highway safety office director, would you be comfortable in supporting and sending your LELs to an expanded training program to support what they're doing now and to advance their interventions in working with law enforcement agents?
110%, I would support that. And I think I speak for many of my partners across the country. All throughout my career in a leadership position, I'm a huge advocate of continuing education and career advancement and providing those learning opportunities for anybody who wishes to seek them out. I think all of us would agree that, you know, life is a journey, and learning is part of that journey each and every day. And we should be always striving to learn more, to be more, to do more, and to expand our horizons. And when I look at our I'm blessed in Minnesota. I have 4 law enforcement liaisons that I think are the best in the business. I'm prejudiced, but when I talk about Bill and Becky and Scott and Frank, I am really proud of what they do each and every day. And if I can put more tools and more knowledge and more skills in their hands, they're only going to be better and better and better. And when we look at this as a recruitment and a retention tool, as we kind of strategically plan out what our LEL force should look like, providing those learning opportunities. This is what today's workforce wants. They want to be able to learn, they want to be able to advance, and they want to be able to be better. So I would absolutely support any type of continuing education or advanced education that's quality, that has a great return on investment, and is presented in a way that helps us all to accomplish our mission.
Thank you, Mike. And I just want to point out, I'm going to come back to you and Glenn and Janice with other questions as well. But Brad, let me pose one to you. For some time now, you've been doing background research on the current LEL functions, and you've attended LEL training programs as well as members of your staff. What are your views on developing new training curricula to support the future work of LELs and advance what they're currently doing?
Well, I want to begin by saying it's really been my pleasure to participate in those training events and other opportunities to speak with LELs across the country. It's really increased my knowledge about the current situation. And with that said, I would say that I've also been fortunate to have responsibility for supporting a number of national programs for law enforcement through grants with the Department of Justice. And in all of those situations, these programs have started with a state or local or regional effort. And what we found is that as we bring them together under the umbrella of a national program, they are always interested, as Mike just pointed out, in advancing their careers, their level of training, their capabilities overall. And I think that through additional opportunities for training, they would welcome not only the ability to learn more about the current situation, but as Janice said earlier, to learn from one another, and also to have the opportunity to network with each other on an ongoing basis. I think that when people come together under a national program, they take great pride in being a member of that association or organization, and to be able to reach out to each other to receive valuable information, best practices, and things of that nature. But I can't say enough about how much they welcome additional training opportunities.
Following up on that, developing a curriculum is one thing. Developing great training programs is fine. But how do you create a sense of importance or a sense of urgency among the people we're trying to reach, the LELs, about training and attending the training? How do you create an expectation that it's essential to their basic learning and their career-long learning?
Yes, we often do that, first of all, by bringing people together in a focus group session to inform us. They're people who are often individuals like the people on this panel. They're also the representatives who have responsibility for supporting these efforts, like NHTSA and the National Highway Governors Association. And they come together to identify what's really working well and also where there are opportunities for improvement. And it's often research-based as well, so that when you see different trends as well as different opportunities to enhance a program, we provide that information to the people who are currently in those roles. And in most cases, what we find is that they want to develop additional skills, additional capabilities. One example I can give you is we have responsibility for the nation's Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force training program. People come in at all different levels to that training. Some have much more ability or past experience with technology, for example, than others. Everyone wants to come up to a level where they feel that they are functioning in compliance or in accordance with the best practices, that they have that skill set necessary to be very effective at what they do and to be able to respond to the situations that come in to their agency or organization. And then they want to build on that from there to become a more advanced level investigator. And finally, somebody who's highly specialized. As they build that resume, as they build out that skill set, they're very proud of what they've accomplished, and they're highly sought after, not only in their own organization, but across the country. And, you know, I watch it all the time at our national conferences. They become presenters, like many of the people on this panel. They also are people who are recognized as subject matter experts in their field. And that sense of accomplishment, that level of certification is something they're very proud of. And I've seen it in many other programs as well. And I think it can certainly be the case for LELs.
Thank you, Brad. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. We've just had a power failure.
Oh, geez.
We're having a storm, a small storm. So hopefully the camera will come back on shortly. I switched. Let me come back to all of you, and then I'll come back to some individual questions. As we talk about training, as we talk about developing LELs and advancing the LEL program, how do we sustain consistency across LELs in the program while respecting the individual focus they have in serving the local agencies and regions that they serve, which may be very different across the country? Mike, can we start with you?
Absolutely, Dr. Greenberg. Thank you. This is going to be one of the trickier things, I think, to do. You know, as I look across the country and talk with my counterparts across the country, one size fits all may not necessarily be the ideal approach, but we also need to have, I think, that concept of consistency in the services that are provided by the law enforcement liaisons. And so that starts with, identifying what are those basic functions that every LEL should be able to provide to the State Highway Safety Office and the law enforcement partners that we all work with. And so that's starts at a basic level, but then we can build on it from there. I think, there's a wide variety of models for law enforcement liaison programs across the state. Everything from contracting with retired law enforcement officers, which is what we do in Minnesota, to having active law enforcement officers fulfilling that role while on a part-time basis, while also working for their agencies, and a variety of other models that exist out there. So building a functional model that can be graduated and that can be built upon that basic foundation is really, I think, a starting place. It may not be the eventual landing pad, but I think when we look at building this up, that's how we would start at it.
Janice, may I pose the same question to you?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you hit the nail on the head. There's not one size fits all for every state and every agency and every highway safety office. Just narrowing it down to Florida, what works in the Panhandle doesn't necessarily work in Miami. So having well-rounded LELs that are able to compartmentalize what's going on in every area and what they can do and focus on that and be able to have the skill set that they can pull the data and they can say, hey, listen, this is what's going on in your region, in your area. This is what's going on in your county or your city or your district. And let's have a talk about this. What can I do to help? Do your officers need training? Do you need a policy? Do you need a procedure? Do you need equipment? Do you need grant? Do you need money? What do you need? How can an LEL help you to drive these numbers down? And the relationship that the LEL has with their highway safety office in every state is going to be a little different all over the country. Man, if there's one thing that I've learned teaching the professional development class is that every state is so very different and one size is not going to fit all. It's what works best for your area to drive those numbers down.
And Glenn, your perspective on that?
Thank you. I would agree with Janice and Mike. There's not one size that fits all. However, there's an opportunity to develop a framework that provides the states with a clear process on how LELs can go from what I call the knowledge base of being subject matter experts to the understanding of how to analyze, how to interpret, and how to explain. And that grows organizational sophistication. And when you grow organizational sophistication, they're able to navigate competing priorities, get things done, promote cooperation. So yes, there's not one size fits all, but I believe there is an opportunity to develop a framework that the states can use to advance their LEL programs. And maybe a suggestion is some type of, and I'll, for a lack of better word, developing a basic national LEL skills coalition of states that have a diversity of programs that work well for them to help develop this framework. But I think there's an opportunity here. And again, I go back that, yes, the knowledge gives us direction, but the understanding gives us an opportunity to make decisions and get progress.
Thank you. So Brad, how do we develop quality training that accommodates the needs consistent to all LELs while focusing on the individual issues and needs that they have in their home territory? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yes, we do this all the time. I've been involved in these national training programs for over 20 years, and I can tell you that we have the same challenges. So we often first, to quote Stephen Covey, we kind of begin with the end in mind. What are the things that the sponsoring agencies hope to achieve in terms of outcomes, what kind of skills, what kind of capabilities they would like to see these individuals possess that participate in these programs. But I'm a strong proponent, and we always have also asked the people in the trenches, as I like to call it, what they would like to see for additional training and resources to support them. And I totally agree with what Janice said earlier. We have task forces in places like Los Angeles Police Department, but we also have them in very small agencies like my own in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Two different worlds, but many of the same challenges. And so what we build from that is we're being very respectful of what the state and local needs are, but also what are some of the national objectives. And we find that the people we survey, we often survey, like I certainly envision a survey for all the existing LELs in terms of what they would like to attain for skills, capabilities, and what kinds of resources they need to support them at both the national and local level. And we would develop the framework, to quote Glenn a few minutes ago, around that, and allow people to participate in a range of different training opportunities. What we often find is that there's an entry-level set of training objectives, and then we try to build additional skills through kind of intermediate, advanced, and even highly specialized training capabilities. And we give people the opportunity to be successful at each level before we ask them to if they would like to participate in additional training. And we try to support them too. I would say that for all of these programs, it's not just about the training and technical assistance. It's also about being part of a larger national effort that's supported by things like websites, things like listservs. We have those for all of our programs, as well as a resource library. For example, recording webinars like this one. We have subject matter experts doing that constantly on a wide range of issues, and people are able to access those. Being able to supplement in-person training with things like live instructor-led training or self-paced training, where they can take it through platforms like Blackboard, for example, that colleges and universities use, where they're able to, in many cases, prior to coming to training, there are prerequisites, and people will be able to take those when they have the time and ability to do so, so that they come in with that baseline level of knowledge and understanding. And then we often find they prefer in person as well as online training. So we try to give them a range of possibilities that fit their situation. And we also try to make sure that we're not trying to train them in everything all at once, so that they're more comfortable as they progress through a series of different training opportunities. I hope that answered your question, Shelley.
Thank you. And again, I apologize. I've had to resort to my phone till we get power back, I hope. Mike, let me ask you a specific question. State highway safety officers are required to report annually on their enforcement programs. This includes the work to foster community collaboration and to collect data that could ensure transparency. It focuses on preventing disparities in enforcement and informing traffic enforcement policies, procedures, activities, and more. What role do you see for highly trained LELs in conducting or supporting these types of activities?
Thank you, Dr. Greenberg. And that's a great question. And for all of my highway safety office directors or staff that are on the line, this is really the answer to getting this work done. I just, as IJA or the current federal funding bill that's out there came into being, and we learned more and more about some of these emerging requirements that we need to report on in order to apply for our NHTSA funding. this was certainly one that we flagged and looked at and wondered, now, how are we going to do that? Well, as soon as I had the opportunity to sit down with the LELs here in Minnesota, it's like a great burden was almost lifted off of our shoulders, because the LELs, as the boots on the ground, they're already connected with the agencies and what they're doing outside of enforcement. And they're actually becoming our worker bees, if I can use that really poor analogy, for bringing all of that information into us so that we can compile that and use that in our grant applications. Most of the agencies, and I think this is not just in Minnesota, I think this is across the country, most of the agencies that are receiving our highway safety grants are already doing some type of community engagement efforts around traffic safety outside of the grants that they're receiving. It's just a matter of us being able to document what they're doing and to be able to compile that in our applications and in our reports that go to NHTSA. So for my highway safety office partners out there, this is a huge value-added labor-saving function that LEL program can provide to your office. All they have to do is go out and talk to those officers and those agencies about what they're already doing, and then come up with a cohesive way to document that. And that is one giant checkbox that we can take off of that annual grant application or triennial highway safety planning process or annual report, because all that information has already got a way into the highway safety office through the LELs.
Thank you, Mike. I'd like to pose this next question to all of you. We briefly mentioned in past webinars the idea of credentialing LELs, some sort of formal or structured credentialing system. And you can have credentialing at different levels. Do you see an advantage to offering a credentialing program to LELs? Would it help advance the role of LELs and the LEL program? And would credentialing be directly related to training or more? Janice, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think having a standard and credential would be a great idea. We'd have that, badge saying that you're aware of your highway safety milestones, you know where we came from, you know where we're going, you've been through an LEL professional development course and have attended, program management courses. Now, the levels of that is, a great roundtable conversation that we should all have. I like to joke a lot that I like to stay in my lane. I know what my lane is. My lane is boots on the ground, dealing with my agencies. And so I might be in LEL 2, where our LEL coordinator, he is in charge of actually facilitating the grants, putting them together, and he might be in LEL 1. And so having those different levels and different credentialing is a great idea. So you know exactly where your LEL stands in your states.
Thank you. Glenn, your thoughts?
Excuse me. I would agree with Janice. Credentialing, I believe, elevates the reputation and the credibility of the LELs. Also, it provides an opportunity for continued education. Any credentialing program has a requirement of continuing education, and I think that is so important to move from what I call that knowledge base to the understanding base that develops a organizational sophistication. And then the last is the credibility. It's just a deeper level of commitment to the mission of traffic safety. And I believe Brad had mentioned earlier about credentialing has some type of stacked elements, and Janice mentioned that as far as being able to advance. And I think people take pride in that, professional pride in that. And there's a real self-interest for the states to participate that, to help create a real network of knowledge brokers that we already have, but even move it further. So I think it's a very good opportunity.
Mike, from a director's perspective, what do you think about credentialing LELs?
Long and short of it, all of the above. I think that Janice and Glenn really hit on a lot of the high points. Glenn, I really like the credibility part of that. That's a big deal. And when you have, different levels of credential, that just continues to add to that level of credibility. Thinking about today's workforce, thinking about recruiting and retention, and being able to offer somebody the ability to not just come in and take a position and stay there, but have the opportunity to learn, to receive additional training, and to advance. Even if it's not a formal advancement, it still is a way that you're improving yourself. And you think about where our LELs come from. They all come from primarily law enforcement agencies. Law enforcement agencies are modeled after the military, so we have that command and control and that rank structure that goes with it. It's something all of our LELs are familiar with. And if you throw that additional or kind of translate that into the LEL program, I think that is another way that we take LEL performance and LEL services and LEL job satisfaction up several levels. So I just think that it's a great idea, and it can be based not only on additional and advanced training, but I think when you look at the higher levels of credentialing, then there also needs to be a performance measure that goes with that as well. It's not just, marking the box, I went to this class, and this class, but I am also starting to demonstrate that I have that, as Glenn says, that higher level of understanding about what my role is and how I can accomplish that.
Thank you, Mike. And Brad, coming back to what Mike just said, from a training perspective, how do you pursue credentialing or certification so that it is more than just a checking the box that I attended the 3 or 5 courses?
Yeah, we do that in a number of ways. And I want to begin by saying everything that's been said prior to me, I fully support and believe that the people we have been training, and we've trained hundreds of thousands of people at this point, want that as well. But to your point, when we develop, we have a highly structured process where the people who are conducting the training are subject matter experts and they're practitioners in the field. We don't use people that have been out of it for a long time, somebody that's read things out of a book. They're people that are in the trenches right now, as Janice says, boots on the ground, that are providing this training. But we're also looking for those desired outcomes, right? We call them terminal performance objectives. What do we want people to be able to do once, and what do they want to be able to do once they complete these levels of training? So we have pre and post knowledge checks. What did you know coming in? What did you know by the end of the training? We also have obviously a student satisfaction or student evaluation where they tell us the things that they're able to apply to the job that they are tasked with doing as a result of the training. Was it applicable to what you do? Is it something that you think will help you? And then we also do performance or impact, I should call it, they're called impact assessments, where 6 months later, we go back to the participants and the organizations that we provided training to and ask them, has the training helped you achieve those outcomes? What was your situation prior to the training, and what's your situation now? And how much of that change would you attribute to the training? And credentialing implies, when I think about law enforcement accreditation, for example, there are standards. People have to achieve those and meet those standards to demonstrate that they're, a professional organization. And I think about it in the same way for the people that we train. They want to be recognized as professionals with a high level of capability, and having that certificate of course completion is something that they very much want. And whether they add it to their personnel file and their resumes, but they want that level of certification, and they desire, in most cases, to move to the next level and beyond, so that they continue to build those skills and are able to say, they're part of this team or this organization When I think about myself, for example, it was a huge career goal to go to the FBI National Academy, to then go to the Law Enforcement Executive Development Training, because I knew that it was only going to help me both as a police officer, but as achieving my career goals. And the same thing for law enforcement accreditation for our organization. And I think everyone in law enforcement wants those same things, but I hope that answered the question once again, Shelley, for you.
Yes, thanks to all of you. I want to come back to something that was mentioned earlier about some LELs being retired officers, some being current officers, some having backgrounds that do not include being former or current officers. What is your perspective on the background that new LELs should possess? Glenn, if I'm going to start with you.
The basic qualities of an LEL is one, I think, initiative. I think a previous history of initiative of going above and beyond, and that comes with having a positive attitude, an attitude that looks at every challenge as an opportunity to succeed. I also think it's important that they have the ability to network, because that's where you become the knowledge broker of developing a broad base of information, where I go back again to understanding that helps provide the Highway Safety Office a broader perspective so that they can make sound business decisions. And then leadership, and what I call the small L leadership in a big leadership world, that they're able to work with leaders and then exercise some independent decision making, knowing again, I'll go back to what Brad said about this. Stephen Covey, you begin with the end in mind. What does success look like? And they understand what success looks like and how they fit in. And then having that ability to develop themselves professionally, to have some organizational sophistication, understanding who in the agencies are the go-to person? How do you compete against or navigate competing interests? How do you promote cooperation? How do you find resources? And just being that go-to person. So yes, it helps to have a law enforcement professional background, but it's not a prerequisite. What is a prerequisite? It is initiative, knowledge, energy, and attitude.
Thank you, Glenn. Mike, your perspective?
Oh, this is a really good discussion topic. And I'll diverge a little bit from Glenn here in that I think that an effective LEL does need to have some type of connection or some type of background to that law enforcement world. Cops are they're kind of insular, and in order to step into a role where you're going to be, working with them and trying to bring them on board, having that law enforcement background gives you some of that instant credibility. Now, I'm not saying that somebody who doesn't have a law enforcement background can't come in and can't do a good job with that. I just think it's helpful to at least have some type of background or connection there. Glenn hit on a lot of I think the personal attributes that you need. I would add in there a passion for the work, a passion for traffic safety, as well as one thing that I look at. If I'm looking at somebody who's coming from law enforcement, I want to see a demonstrated history that you were doing the work, and not just at a moderate level, but that passion really comes from the work that was done on the road. Self-motivated, Glenn, I think you're absolutely right there. They've got to be a self-starter, and really, I'm not sure this is a job for an introvert. You have to be able to go out there and make connections with people, oftentimes who are going to outrank you, and by more than just a little bit. Flexibility. Not every agency that the law enforcement liaison is going to deal with is going to be the same. And so you're going to have a variety of ways that you approach the leadership within those agencies to get the job done. And to build on Covey a little bit, but also followership skills, leading upwards, because again, as a law enforcement liaison, you're going in, you're visiting with chiefs, you're visiting with commanders, with deputy chiefs, and you know, you need to know how to lead upward a little bit in an effective way. So there's a lot of good things here, and a lot of potential, and it's exciting to look at this on what we could be creating.
Thank you, Mike. And before I throw it to Janice to answer the same question or respond to it, I just want to remind the audience that you can use your Q&A button to pose questions to the panel. Janice, your response.
Yeah, I think I have a hybrid melting pot response between Glenn and Mike. I think it's very good to have law enforcement experience, almost a necessity, but every once in a while you'll find that right LEL, that man just gets it. They just get traffic safety. But you're right, Mike, it gives us credibility. When we have been there, done that, we've worked the road, we've written the tickets, we've worked the homicide, it gives us credibility coming in there to our agencies. What's frustrating as an LEL is when we start communicating with sometimes program managers or other people in our highway safety office who have zero idea on what our officers do on the roadside, and they're trying to direct these agencies to participate or to better their traffic safety programs, and they have really no idea what they do on the side of the road. So as an LEL, again, we are that great bridge between our highway safety office and our boots in the ground that tell us you know, what to do, where to go, and we can communicate on both levels.
Thank you. And Brad?
As I mentioned earlier, all of our instructors are practitioners. They're people actively working in the field who have that credibility, as Janice spoke about. But we do a lot to support people coming into a program. I'm sitting here in New Orleans right now at the Amber Alert Conference, for example. That's another program we manage for the nation. So if you're part of a child abduction response team, or a CART team, as they're called, you come here and you go through an orientation with other people, kind of an onboarding process, right? If you're a new commander, and then you're hearing from the people at the federal level about what some of their goals are. But at the same time, you're networking with all of the other CART team commanders who are there to help you, even if you have gaps in maybe some of the knowledge that they have, and they're here to support you. And then once you become part of that network and you're part of that listserv or that secure website where they communicate with each other, they share best practices, model programs, they help one another achieve the collective goals of the organization or the program. And so I think that that's really important, rather than try, as I say, we don't want to throw people in the deep end of the pool, hope that they're, hope's not a strategy, hope that you're going to be successful. We try to make sure that you have the framework, to quote Glenn earlier, that you need, but also the structure and the support and the resources to be successful. And I think that's critically important for the LEL program.
Thank you, Brad. Janice, we got a question from one of the participants. Does Florida have an in-house training program to onboard new LELs before they attend the national professional training courses?
So no, we do not. So we actually are in the final process. We just had 2 open LEL positions in Florida, and we're in the final processes of hiring them. Once we hire them on, they will go through a pseudo FTO program. So they will get to monitor and mirror our current LELs and learn how each of our other LELs do it. Again, what they do in the Panhandle is very different than what they do in Miami. So our new LELs will get basically an FTO process on how to be a better LEL, and then they will go to our national LEL professional development class.
Mike and Glenn, is that the same for you? Are you aware that there's, for lack of a better term, an informal or maybe even a structured FTO type program for new LELs?
Dr. Greenberg, I'm kind of in maybe the enviable position. When I took over in 2017, I inherited a really strong cadre of LELs, and I haven't had to replace any of them yet. However, when we get to that point, I would envision something very similar to what Janice just described, kind of a field training program, and that type of a mentorship before attending the national training.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Glenn?
And the same as Mike and Janice, the states that I've worked with have essentially a mentoring program, and then they also provide the opportunity to attend the Transportation Safety Institute's LEL professional development. And the feedback that I've gotten regarding that class has always been overwhelmingly positive, that not only does it help them understand their role, but it connects them up with other colleagues, again, going back to creating that network of knowledge brokers.
Thank you. Coming back to what was said just a few minutes ago about the role of LELs and interacting with chiefs and sheriffs, commanders, deputy chiefs, and others. What can we do? Perhaps you think it's being done extremely well now. What can we do to advance the identity and branding of the LEL program and then individual LELs among the law enforcement agencies, small, medium, and large? Janice?
Well, in Florida, we're very fortunate. The LEL program, we have a fantastic relationship with our highway safety office. I feel like everybody knows about our LEL program. We also work tight with our Florida Sheriff's Association, our Florida Police Chiefs Association. So everybody really has knowledge of our LELs. Sometimes it's, what exactly do you do? Oh, you're the click it or ticket girl. Oh, you're the drive sober girl. No, that's what you do. But we are so much more than that. I mean, yeah, nationwide, I think our highway safety offices are underutilizing our LELs right now. And if the word got out, really, the knowledge base that we have and the things that we could do, our phones would not stop ringing.
Glenn? Your thoughts on branding, or for lack of a better term, marketing our LELs better to the agencies that they serve?
I think that there's been a very good job of marketing the LELs, but like with anything, it's not a destination, it's a journey. And the journey, and I again go back to this webinar, is the LELs are very good tactical thinkers. They're very good operational thinkers. And where I see a real opportunity with this webinar and potential credentialing is helping to develop the understanding for LELs to be that strategic thinker. When you're dealing with a sheriff or a police chief, and if you are an LEL that has had prior executive level experience, you understand the basics of budgeting, policies, and you're able to relate to them. You're able to understand their world, and they understand you as far as when you are talking about it's in their self-interest to participate. A lot of sheriffs, a lot of police chiefs know it's the right thing to do to perform traffic law enforcement. However, they may not have the political will from their communities. So as LELs thinking strategically, you share with them what is the self-interest for your agency to participate that provides greater transparency, accountability, and what the public expects. So I see an opportunity, like through this webinar and credentialing, to help advance the skills of LELs and highway safety offices having more influence.
Mike, your thoughts?
I think Glenn put it very well as Janice. I think, you know, the LEL is a resource that needs to be utilized, and the LEL can deliver the tools and the strategies to that law enforcement leader who may be facing some community pushback. They can bring best practices, and they can bring the data that backs up the reason for doing it and doing it the right way. And when you can make that case ahead of time, it makes those decisions for that law enforcement leader much clearer and much easier.
Thank you. The next question is built on one that was just emailed to me from someone from a participant who knows me and emailed me directly. And this is a question I'm posing to all of you. As we look to the near future, you can go long-term if you want, but as we look to the near future, what are the 2 or 3 main issues that you believe our LELs will be facing? Glenn?
I'll go back again to earlier comments, specifically the legitimacy of doing traffic law enforcement. There are some communities that are making public policies to reduce law enforcement's opportunity to do traffic law enforcement, and LELs being able to explain the importance of the overwhelming purpose of traffic law enforcement to provide a better quality of life to their communities. And again, procedural justice is going back to the fairness of the interaction with the police. If you look at Department of our Bureau of Justice statistics, more people encounter police interaction through a traffic stop. And again, it goes back to the fairness of being able to promote those 2 concepts of legitimacy and procedural justice. This isn't new. This has been around for decades. But again, there's an opportunity for law enforcement liaisons to emphasize the importance of that professional police services to those agencies, and being able to thoroughly understand those concepts and how they apply.
Thank you, Glenn. Janice, what do you see as the 2 or 3 main issues LELs are going to be facing?
Yeah, so I'm just going to highlight technology. Technology is here and is in the now. I mean, 20 years ago when I was, on the side of the road with a measuring wheel and a baseline doing my traffic homicide investigations, had you told me I'd have a little aircraft over my scene, in 20 years drawing out my diagram for me, I would have said you were crazy. So keeping our finger on the pulse of technology is a great tool for the LEL to have and to keep up with it. I was on a NHTSA assessment yesterday, and a hot topic came up of micromobility and just how are we helping our agencies, save lives? I mean, I hate to be cliche, but that is the business that we're in. We are here to drive our numbers down. Every state has some kind of zero mission, and here in Florida, it's target zero. And how do we help our agencies get to that mission? I mean, I would just be happy having our numbers decline at this point, but every day our numbers keep going up and up and up, and we have to ask our agencies, what can we do? And as an LEL, how can we help our agencies get their traffic units more effective to drive these numbers down? So I think that is my main goal in the near future and long-term future, is to keep our numbers going down.
Thank you, Mike.
Oh, this is a good one, and we could probably eat up a couple hours talking about this. Glenn and Janice, I think, did a good job encapsulating some of this. Certainly traffic law enforcement has been really the acceleration occurred with the pandemic, with the de-emphasis on this, and that's only continued. And we need to, the LEL is going to be key in helping us to reverse that downward trend in the activity related to traffic safety. Although going hand in hand with that, we can have the best LELs in the world, and you can have all the buy-in from the agencies that you're working with, but if they don't have the staff to answer 911 calls, they're not going to have the staff to go out there and do the traffic unit. I look across Minnesota and other states, what's the first unit to go in a law enforcement agency when times get tough and staff is short? It's not the robbery homicide unit, it's the traffic unit. And those officers are then redeployed. So we have that. We have all of the social issues that we're dealing with right now. And Glenn, I think you did a good job encapsulating some of those, that the procedural justice, social justice issue, the perception of traffic law enforcement and what it is. The basic purpose of a traffic stop has kind of gotten lost in some of the conversation. The purpose of a traffic stop is to change aberrant driver behavior to make our roads safer for everybody. Now, certainly traffic stops can and do lead to other criminal activity, but that's not the primary purpose of it, or shouldn't be. If we look from a law enforcement agency standpoint, what are the challenges? Certainly staffing is there, community buy-in, community engagement, community pushback is there. But you're also on the other side of that coin. If you look, what is the number one complaint that most police departments receive, or sheriff's departments? 20–30% of their complaints are directly related to traffic issues. So how is a law enforcement leader going to balance all of these competing things? And this is where the LEL, by going in with data and with best practices and with some of the tools the State Highway Safety Office can bring to the table, can help that law enforcement leader get over some of these really tough potholes and through some of that barbed wire.
Thank you. And Brad, your thoughts on the key issues?
I really think there needs to be an assessment of what's working well and what's not. In the time that I've had to meet with current LELs, to listen to them, what I'm seeing is that they don't necessarily have the support to achieve the objectives that we're looking for. And to cite what Janice said a minute ago, if the objectives are to bring the numbers down, the number of fatalities, the number of injuries, I was really saddened to see just this morning, I got a news alert. There was a fatal crash in my home city of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where someone died on I-95 this morning. And yet I'm hearing from the LELs, well, I'm not really clear on what these objectives are, number one, and I'm sure that's not everywhere, but I certainly heard that loud and clear from a number of them that I've talked to. And, you know, maybe they're restricted from being effective in what we're trying to achieve. I've had LELs tell me, you know, my job is primarily grant management and not necessarily being out there working with law enforcement executives and communities about various campaigns or various opportunities to successfully impact what they need, you know, in a positive way. How can I support you in your goals, you know, in whatever community I'm dealing with? So I think we really do need to do that assessment, and we need to also follow that up with providing them with, you know, achievable outcomes that they all know and understand, and then provide the support and the training wherever possible.
Building on that, and this follows up some of the things we've talked about in previous webinars too. We want to build on our successes. Very important. Our successes in training, our successes in developing LELs, and looking at what they do. But much of the discussion about what LELs do, assessment is based on simple statistics. Fatalities are down, injuries are down, what have you. So many dollars in grants have been awarded. What can we do to support LELs in assessment, which Brad was just discussing, in ways that look beyond simple statistics? Glenn?
I would call that quality production. And to me, quality production of an LEL is an assessment that they have sincere effort and they exhibit a positive attitude. One of the measures of success for an LEL is creating more opportunities for positive interaction with law enforcement, with the community and highway safety offices. And then also LELs being able to highlight the professional competency of the law enforcement agencies that they work with. Again, that goes back to the legitimacy of doing traffic law enforcement and the fairness of doing traffic law enforcement. And then the last part is their decision making. There are so many options that a highway safety office pursues in the comprehensive traffic safety mission. How does that LEL help them see that broad perspective and improve those solutions. So again, I think it's quality production, it's sincere effort, good decision making, attitude, energy, and knowledge.
Thank you, Glenn. Janice, your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. One of the panelists said that, you have to be a little extroverted to have this job. I believe in brutal honesty and transparency with my agencies, and I literally ask them, what do you need? How can I help? What's going on in your area? I mean, do you need the training? Do you need the equipment? What do you need? So as an assessment and a big question is literally just to ask our agencies, what's going on in your area, and how can I help you drive your numbers down? And just be very transparent in our job and our performance. I mean, it's easy for me to pull data and to show you where your corridors are going on, but be very personal and just ask them, what's going on? How can I help?
Thank you. Mike, your thoughts?
Oh, you're muted, Mike.
You're on mute, Mike.
Sorry about that. Good question. And it caused me to pause and think a little bit. In its simplest form, when I visit with chiefs and sheriffs across the state, and when they come up and they tell me how much they appreciate what that LEL does for that region, for their agency, that is one measure that I have of performance. The other thing that I really like and that I look at is how many ideas are they bringing back to me from the agencies that they work with. One of the most successful and popular things that we did several years ago around distracted driving came directly from a conversation with one of our local PD sergeants and our LEL. And they wanted a patrol platform that sat up a little higher so they could see this distracted driving taking place. Well, the LEL brought that to our office. We looked at it, we identified the funding, and we built them a big pickup truck. And that has proven so popular, in fact, that we're now building several more of those for the grant groups out there. And that's just one example of the ideas that come forth. And this is also, surrounding that community engagement part of it from our law enforcement partners. How do we fund? One of the agencies brought to the attention of one of our LELs, we have a large immigrant population. English is a second language. They're not familiar with the driving rules. The parents don't have driver's licenses, so they can't train the kids. How do we do this? So we came up with a way to fund a law enforcement presented driver's education 101 for how you get your driver's license, how you get trained, things like that. So if those ideas continue to come in, that tells me my LELs are fully engaged with their agencies out there and they're doing what needs to be done. And Glenn, as you said, that accountability and that performance measure is coming back to me.
Thank you, Mike. And Brad, your thoughts? You're on mute.
Thanks. Yeah, one of the things we found has been very effective for the programs that we support is to support their efforts at a state and local level to gather information and to provide, the data, some of the things that a law enforcement executive may not be familiar with. So they'll host, say, a day-long event or a luncheon or something of that nature, and we'll provide, if they need it, some subject matter experts to come to that event. And what we often find from these, they could be the chief, the sheriff, but they could also be, the deputy chief, the commander, the captain, somebody that has responsibility in that particular area. And when we do the evaluation at the end of the day, what we often hear is, wow, I was not really aware of that. It's awfully hard, I think, I know in my own state, for example, there's 220 law enforcement agencies and only a handful of LELs. They don't necessarily have the opportunity to meet with everyone. So like I said, we'll support a statewide event or a regional event. And what it does is it helps them raise that awareness, but also gain additional support for what they're trying to do.
I may follow up on that. This is for all of you again. Because of the very number of agencies and states, some have over 1,000 agencies in the state, some almost 2,000 in Texas, for example. what can we do to support or advance the influence and connection LELs have with agencies, given the volume of agencies that they have to serve? Janice?
I'm going to use this opportunity for a shameless plug. We're going to network. For all the highway safety office people out there, send your people to an LEL professional development class. This is a great way to network and steal ideas so that you can get out there and communicate and find out what other agencies are doing and what other LELs and other states are doing to communicate with these people. We have over 300 agencies in Florida. I can't even imagine, our counterparts in Texas, what they're doing. But it is building networks and how you build your networks. In Florida, we use a various systems that we can communicate out there. I'm in charge of our social media, so our social media platform is huge on how to communicate with our agencies. But there is all kinds of different ways, and learning from other LELs and learning what other states do is a great way to start.
Thank you. Glenn?
I think there's an opportunity for LELs to help provide an extra voice of support for law enforcement agencies through the Highway Safety Office. And what I mean by that is that in many regions, the media has accentuated the errors of law enforcement, and law enforcement is very complex, and to generalize a specific tactic is, I think, unfair. And LELs can help provide that voice of support for law enforcement agencies in recognizing those officers that have exhibited high professional competency, transparency, courtesy, agencies that have been responsive to their communities, and share that with the highway safety offices, who then can publicly comment on that or recognize it. Because I've talked to a number of sheriffs and police chiefs that believe that they don't have a public, or they don't have a neutral voice that's providing support for them. So LELs being able to provide a supportive voice to recognize the great day-to-day work that these law enforcement agencies are doing.
Thank you. Mike?
That's the eternal challenge. I have 4 LELs in Minnesota. We have just over 400 law enforcement agencies, and we currently partner with just over 300 of them. So that, the 4 of them have their work cut out for them. Certainly, empowering them to represent the office and having the confidence and the trust that they are going out there and doing that each and every day. And that's a two-way street, because when the agencies that they're working with see that we are committed to them, they will commit to us as long as we maintain that relationship. Give them a large toolbox. The more tools, cops like toys. The more toys you put on the table, the more likely you are to build and maintain those relationships. I like, Glenn, you mentioned recognition. That's one thing that we really, especially over the course of the last 3 years, I have made it a point that the LELs need to recognize really good law enforcement traffic safety performance out there. We have a variety of ways that we do this. We recognize individual officers. We will recognize agencies, whether it's for a specific event or for a long-term commitment and performance, things like that. It's really important to be able to shed positive light on our law enforcement partners and emphasize that positive life-saving work that they're doing in the world of traffic safety out there. And then, give them some flexibility. Again, agencies are all different. Regions in our states are all different. And every LEL has got to know that region and what's going to work and what doesn't there. And again, one size may not always fit all.
Thank you, Mike. And Brad, we're running out of time, just a minute or so. Can you respond to?
Great answers from everybody. The one thing that came to my mind is we often do workshops at statewide, like the State Chiefs Association Conference or Sheriff's Association Conference, or at the county level as well, that also raises awareness about the importance of these programs.
Thank you. I do want to point out, we got some great questions some very specific questions about high visibility enforcement and the interaction between LELs and motor vehicle administrations that we couldn't get to with the time we have, but we will save those questions and bring them up in future webinars and in other forums. I want to thank each of you very, very much. I really appreciate your time, your thought, your insight, our discussion about the current and future roles of LELs and their involvement in advancing effective traffic enforcement is really critical to our shared goals, our goals in the project, our goals at states, our goals with Vision Zero, many others. I especially want to thank our audience. They stayed with us through the whole program, which is great. That's always super when you're doing a webinar. We're going to continue to reach out to all of the stakeholders involved in the LEL program and in support of advancing traffic enforcement as we seek practical and innovative paths forward. We look forward to all of your involvement in all of our participants' involvement in future webinars and more discussions. And again, to our panelists, I really appreciate you very, very much. You were great. And I look forward to working with each of you again. Thank all of you very, very much. And we'll notify you soon about our next webinar. Take care all.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day, everybody.